On today's show, we had Marco Plouffe, character artist and co-founder of Keos Masons. From his massive lineup of personal and professional sculpts to his groundbreaking ZBrush workflows, he's been featured across ArtStation and many other platforms. In this episode, we cover everything from 3D printing and Marco's sources of inspiration to how artists can overcome negative mindsets and get back to having fun in their personal work. Marco also shares the video game world he would want to live in, an exciting announcement from Keos Masons, and so much more. Please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with the chaos maker himself, Marco Plouffe.
Yeah, and actually, our most recent podcast that we did together was just to get back into the run of it after our Christmas break. We did a podcast about like our inspirations going from like childhood until now. And so I thought that might be a fun way. We had a lot of fun doing it, so I thought that might be fun to pitch to you. I know you've talked a bit about your inspirations being like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mega Man and Dragon Ball Z and stuff when you were younger. So I thought it was cool that you said that you were making your own like Mega Man bosses, and like we both did the same thing just with different franchises. Like Colton made his own Pokemon, and I made my own World of Warcraft characters. So I think it's kind of cool that we all have that same parallel. But what I wanted to ask you about is that you said in one interview that you try to get ideas from things that are outside your industry so that you don't recycle what's already out there. And I was wondering if you could dive into that a little more and maybe give us some examples of that and kind of how you go about keeping your horizons broad in like a very algorithm-based internet these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's really weird because it, like, at the end of the day, it becomes like almost like anything you can digest that's maybe like outside of like what typically people will use as reference. That would probably be like the shortest explanation for it.
Sure.
The reason why it's because I'm not gonna make as if like I was like the most inspiring artist. That's not gonna be the point. But I did observe something though that I'm trying to practice for myself, to the degree that I feel comfortable. And it's basically like to be like inspired by things that are maybe like unusual. Cedric's pretty good at that, actually. I find that he doesn't have a hard time to just like get inspired by anything and do some really, really original things. And the reason why I think it's important, it's just because like, and it's not to like stab at anyone because it's totally valid, but when you get too inspired by like the same source, let's say like ArtStation, a lot of like the same ideas are gonna start to come back, and it's good, it's cool. I mean, people sometimes they feel comfortable with like an idea that they know, and it's totally fine. But if we're talking about like broadening the horizons, it's sometimes you gotta really go outside of the loop to really reach for something that just like feels fresh. And at the same time, like, just don't get me wrong, right? There's nothing that comes out of the void or of the vacuum, right? Every new thing is taken from something, or taken from two things, or taken from three things and mashed together. Mm-hmm. And that's what creates a new flavor, right? You're not gonna like a chef in a restaurant. He's gonna be named like a master chef, and he did not invent a new kind of beef, right? He just took like beef and he created like assemblage of it that just like is just so good. And like I don't know if new is like a good word, right? But it's just to say that like the pieces are all out there, right? It's just how you put them together sometimes that just makes for like something fresh and new. And like, I don't know, right? I mean, if I look at something like Dark Souls, which is like probably like my favorite game, or in my favorite games, it's pretty modern. It's stuff we all know, like high fantasy and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But like, why am I so attracted to it, right? I mean, I was never attracted to that with like Lord of the Rings or other things like Warcraft, or it didn't really capture my interest, right? But they mixed it with some weird like mythology or secrets and mystique and unanswered questions, and it just became so like incredibly fascinating. I can't even say like what's my favorite character, what's my favorite design, but as a whole, they just like took some stuff together and it just made something like so nice, right?
Oh yeah.
So going back to like being an artist, that's just basically like a bit like the idea. I mean, you're never gonna like reinvent the wheel, but you know, like when you do like creature design, right? Let's say if you look back at like what was invented like in the last years. Let's say when I say last years, I'm thinking about like the 2000s,
sure.
Right? It's like there's a lot of things that were invented that were like, oh, super fresh and new or whatever. But like you look at like everything that was created, and there's so much stuff that's like the same. And sometimes I think that like the most like inspiring people were not the one that were instantly inspiring. I believe that like the inspiring people became inspiring like 12 years after they're dead almost.
Yeah.
But the remnants of it actually stuck with like enough people so that at some point it became just like such an incredible idea. I'm talking, for example, like Moebius that's like Cedric's probably is like that's probably his favorite like artist, Moebius, because he just like created something that was like so wacky, so out of the norm at that time, and still out of the norm right now. But I don't know if he was popular at his time because a lot of like that's what I said. A lot of artists, they're like so original that it just doesn't like really capture people's attention because it's too out of the norm. Right. And then later, like a centerfold for like originality and such.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're inspired by. I know Moebius was doing a lot of acid in the desert, so I'm not gonna say go do acid in the desert, kids. Don't go do peyote. Don't like or do if you want. I mean, it's up to we're in free countries, but but I'm just saying, like, I just remember for myself sometimes just watching like not National Geographic, but Planet Earth with like David Attenborough, and just watching that show and looking at like animals that we all know, but just looking at them like in their behavior and their environment and where they come from and that stuff, and just sometimes finding just like one thing that I find so fascinating about like their lifestyle, and then you can just totally like take that, you can mix it with something else, and I don't know, you can just like come up with like ideas. It can be like a mutant, it can be like a robot, but you're just like, oh wow, the way that they do that thing is just like really interesting. I'm just going to give you an example, like ducks. Ducks are like the worst animal on the planet, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, to each other, because I don't know if you've seen like those, I don't remember what they're called, but they're like videos on the internet, and there's like a guy that just like mimics Morgan Freeman's voice, and he just talks about like animal, like super weird behaviors. And there's one about the ducks, and it's basically about like how they mate, and it's like, for example, like the most duck there is in the environment, the bigger their penis is going to be. Yeah. And also, if it's not about the size, it's about like their feature. Like some are going to have spikes, so that like when they're inside like the Mrs. Duck, like it cannot go out, even if it wanted to, which is like super savage. Yeah. And also like on the other end, the female duck, to protect themselves, they're going to actually have like inside, like the vaginal canal is going to be like in a spiral shape, so that it's just like super hard to get to the end, and there's going to have like dead ends so that they actually don't get really to the end. It's going to be like a decoy space, right? So
what an evolution.
Right? It's like it's evolution, it's adaptation because of their environment, because of this and that, right? Yeah. And it's just like duck. You never think that a duck is going to do that, but when you just look at what it is for what it is, man, and that's inspiring. It's vile, but there's something in there that's just totally like outside of like the way we see life if we just stop at like ArtStation.
Yeah, and it's undeniably fascinating. Like you tell that to anybody and they're going to be like, what? No way. And if you can capture that and then turn it into something artistic, you're onto something really cool and new.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that when you're talking about like artistic inspiration, I find that there's like, or at least like for myself, there's like two ways that I get inspired of doing something. One can be just like for the fun of it, like freestyling a design. So you just like start from a sphere and you just start like exploring shapes. And then like at some point you're like, oh, this looks like a chihuahua. And then like you do like something and then it's like, oh, he has like it looks like a mechanical thing on his head. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm doing a mechanical chihuahua. Nice. So basically, like if you know like the piece that I'm talking about in my portfolio, well, okay, so that's exactly how it came to be, right?
Wow.
It's just, I was so like annoyed by Cedric's dog. He had a chihuahua at the time that was just like barking all the time, and it just stuck in my head. So when I sculpted that, I just ended up sculpting like that chihuahua, and I just made it badass. And that was like freestyle, right? There was not really any intention. It was just like, let's see like where my mind like drives me. When I just like freestyle sculpt on something. So that's like sculpting with inspiration without like objective, let's say, theme. And the other like way that I find that I get inspired is with theme, I'd say. If we go like way further back in like my portfolio, I had like the Seven Sinners.
Oh yeah. Those are amazing.
That one, thanks, man. That one I really like doing, and it was really like different because I didn't know what it was gonna look like. I didn't really have any like intention on the look, which is something that I more concentrate when I go on the freestyle perspective. But like with that one, I was like, you know what? I just want to like say something, I just want to say something. I'm not going to say something like crazy, and I'm not going to change the world, but I just want to say something through this piece. And so I just did some research. Like I started with like the biblical signification of like the seven sins, how people interpret it, how they were interpreted through time, right? So just to give me the most scope on like how it could be. And like once you accumulate like a few like definitions or keywords, then you can just like take that and then you can just be like, okay, well, let's see like where that like gets me, right? This is like something that also sometimes I just do in my head. Like once I have those keywords, I just like start to like daydream about like what it could be, just to see like where my head goes. Sometimes people will like draw instead or do it in 3D, like my freestyle like method, let's say. Yeah. But sometimes it's just like thinking over it, just making me think what it does. Sometimes just letting some time pass and just see like what comes up. And basically like that's what I did, mixed with like a few like thumbnailing just to kickstart like my ideas. I ended up with like a few like sketches just to give me like some ideas. And at some point you just like find one idea that you're like, okay, that one, I love it. That's actually like it. All the dots connect with that idea. And when I have this feeling about like a theme or something, then it's like fuel to actually just say, okay, let's go and let's do that. So, you know, like when people talk about like their, in French is le syndrome de la page blanche. So it would be like the white page syndrome, blank page syndrome.
Yep.
What is that an expression in English?
Yeah. It's I don't
blank page.
Blank syndrome. Blank page blank check syndrome. It's we know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Because my brain's always thinking in French, right? So I have to make sure it's like a valid expression in English. So yeah, for people that actually have this like blank page syndrome, I'd say that for me personally, it's probably something that helped the most. It's if you feel like it's hard for you to like freestyle, maybe like find yourself like a theme or something that's inspiring, because that's really, and also for people that have like other syndromes, like artistic syndromes, like I don't have like blank page syndrome. I'd say it's probably not the one that I have, but one syndrome that I have is I have a couple. Like I have imposter syndrome. We can talk about that later.
Sure.
But there's one that I have. It's basically just like the why do that syndrome.
Interesting.
And it's like do I really want to do that? Why should I like start that like that idea, or like, is it good enough, or that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And if I can actually find like a few keywords or just an idea that it's inspiring, like I said about the Seven Sinners, well, that's going to be like a super driving force to just like kick me in the butt and be like, okay, you know what? I'm starting. I think I have a good idea. Let's go. I'm going to figure out the rest on the way.
So Margot, when you're answering those questions, are you answering them in terms of almost your artistic legacy or the impact that you think these are going to have? Or are they more like internal, like, I just want to I want to work on these sinners because I'm working out some kind of internal I mean, I'm totally making up this own story here, but like, what were some of the ways that you approach answering that question? So
totally honest, I'm not sure I understood the depth of the question, but
so when you're answering that question of like, why do I even start this, is it a very broad context of why do I want to create this? With like, when I'm picturing Marco at your scale, like you have artists all around the world who will at least be aware of your work when they are making the next big films, big video games. Are you thinking about that kind of, like, when you make your next piece of art, you're thinking about how it's going to impact all those people? Or is it still very much an internal quest that you're on?
Yeah, okay, that's okay. I totally understand. You know what? I'd say that it's more like an internal quest, to be honest. My imposter syndrome, that would be the other thing you said. Like, in terms of like, like how am I going to be seen more in like a public sense with all the people that knows me? This is where the imposter syndrome kicks in, right? But to go back to the why do that syndrome, I'd say it's more internal, and it's more in terms of like, what is it going to bring to me? Am I trying to myself with that? Am I trying to just like have fun with that? Am I trying to create something new? It's basically like along those lines. And like sometimes I guess that the reason it's because like I've been like sometimes like told to do like art for this reason and for that reason. And I found with like time that it didn't really like answer my needs, and I kind of like had to figure out why I do art for my own. And even if it's not like the most virtuous reasons or the most virtuous ways, but if I take, for example, like the last like series that I did, it was not even supposed to be a series at first. It was just like having fun for a second. It was like the Mega Man mashup that I did. I started with Zero just because like I always told myself I was going to do Zero because it's just a cool character for me. I love Mega Man. When Mega Man X came out and there was Zero, I was like, that's the coolest character in the planet. Like, I wish he was my dad. Not at all my dad, but you know, I mean, I'm just like, what an analogy. Like, it's just like, wow, that character is so fucking nice. And it's when I started like to do art, I figured out that like Mega Man was not necessarily like my style, but it always was something that I found so cool for X reason, or X reason, get it? Mega Man X, or whatever. Wow. Okay. So I always found it like really interesting, but like when I matured in art, I found like myself to be more inclined to a certain style that actually was going away from maybe some of the stuff that I was inspired when I was a kid, like Mega Man or Dragon Ball. But I still like love the character itself, and I really wanted to pay tribute by doing like a Zero character. And at the same time, I was just like abusing of Dark Souls. So I was like, hey, you know what? That's gonna be that's funny, and I like association. So let's just put like Mega Man in Dark Souls, right? Yep. And then when I did that, I was like, dude, now I need to do X in something else. So it started like X and Alien, and then like this and that or whatever. So I just did it. And to go back to my point, it's that I figured out that the reason for doing it, the why, was basically just like, I just need to have fun. I just needed to have fun. It felt like for a while I was doing things for a reason because like they want to see like a art surface piece, or they want to see that. And the Mega Man in something that's not hard surface, I just needed to have fun. And I had so much fun with the first one that I was like, let's chase that feeling until I'm just like tired of doing that. And it took basically like part of a year. And I went through like all the ones until I was like, yeah, I'm pretty much over it. That I'm ready to like to do something else, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it answered like my why. It just felt like
it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves there too. Is like when you're having fun, it almost doesn't feel like as much of a burden to get through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters based on that one idea. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's I feel like a lot of people are like maybe like doing art for the wrong reason, and maybe they don't find that like driving force. And at the same time, I'm saying that, and I'm not saying that's the answer for everybody, right? Yeah. I'm just looking at myself and projecting myself, and I found that it was so easy to just go do something when it just like felt right. And well, feeling right is maybe like some quest on its own, and sometimes you're just wondering, how do I get there? But it's just by trying and by doing stuff, and at some point, like you'll reach it. I think you just really have to just like listen to yourself, and you'll know what's fun, right? And maybe the hard answer is going to be like, oh, it's maybe not in like 3D art, maybe it's something else, right? But it's just like in life in general, it's just like, does that make me happy? Well, then, yeah. That's a simple answer, right? So you take that and then you try to place it in your life, because life is not about having fun all the time. It's also about like obligations and such. But there's like a place for it at some point, because you can't like lose yourself, which that is a complete other subject. It's basically like because I'm going to invent like a question that somebody's asking me, like a lot of juniors have this question. It's like, well, I mean, should I just have fun and put stuff that I have fun with in my portfolio, or should I like create a portfolio that's going to get me a job, right? That's like, now we're like entering the second chapter of the whole idea. It's basically, when's it time to just like do something that's maybe not for fun, but for a purpose, right? Like a professional purpose.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've all went there. I mean, Colton, I knew you when you were like at school, so you probably had those questions when you came out, right? Like, oh, I want to get hired, so what do I need to do, like for my portfolio, what I need to put in, and that sort of stuff, right? And
yeah, definitely. And I'm really curious, like going off of what you were just talking about, there seemed to be, I mean, this is getting at kind of a bigger question that I was planning on striking at earlier, but you've already started talking about sort of the finding fulfillment in the art that you're making. And I just have found that with so many character artists, I mean, in a lot of ways, as a student, your goal is pretty clear. It's like, okay, whether or not I'm doing the stuff that's fun or the things that are going to get me hired, the goal is to get hired. But as soon as you have those gigs lined up, whether you're freelancing or you're working at a company, there tends to be sort of this overall, that stereotype of like the pessimistic, dark artist. And I've seen that with so many. And honestly, man, it was the reason I was so excited to have you on our show, is because you are one of the few artists that I know that from the very first time that I met you, you just sort of had this spark in your eye. That spark that I feel like a lot of us felt like we had as artists, and that I feel like sort of dies out with many people. And a big reason we even started this podcast was to sort of explore different avenues that we have access to as artists, to see what other options are out there and ways to look at the work that you do to find more fulfillment and enjoyment from it. And I think it's one reason why it's inspiring listening to you talk about these projects that you're doing and why you like
it. A great question. That's a great question that you're actually like asking right there. And there's so much to explore about that. And I think well, first of all, that's a journey for anybody. So like, let's say let's talk about it, and let's go like chronologically, for example.
Sure.
Let's start at, it's not the very beginning, because like my beginning was like way earlier, but let's start at like when you get out of school. So let's assume that like the best thing you can do as an artist, or like the basic thing is go to school or whatever, if it's like physical or like tutorials on the internet or like classes on the internet, just like school as itself, because learning by yourself it can be valid for sure, but there's like a sense of like structure that I find that like when you go to school is like teaching you. In case you don't have it, I mean, at least you're going to have like a sense of like how long should you spend doing that, what do you do when you're not going in the right direction, blah blah blah, and like having the support that you get at school, I mean, it's kind of helpful, even if you get like teachers that are not necessarily like the best at like their craft, like they can have some knowledge about like, because of their experience, even if they're not like great artists, because of their experience, they'll know how to do things the right way. And you might actually not waste time this way. Like, small parenthesis, I've played guitar for like 10 years before I decided to go in 3D. I was actually like thinking of like becoming a musician and everything. Oh, wow. But I've learned music in such a like, I don't know like how to say it, but like deconstructed way that like after 5-6 years of playing guitar and learning music, I just realized how wrong I learned it. And I there was like a few foundations of music that I never really practiced. And I was just like trying to do like the crazy like guitar solos. And I wasn't really like that good at like rhythmic guitar. And it's like, no, it's the opposite. You need to be like good at rhythmic guitar before going to anything else, because rhythmic guitar exists under everything else that you're going to do. Right. So if you don't work at your foundation, the same way that in 3D, if you don't work at your anatomy, you're never going to like be able to really like go like crazy on like higher end stuff, because your foundation is going to be like all like muddy and everything. And so like, and I find that like just whatever, like, I find sometimes I see artists on the internet and I'm like, you do like a ton of details and everything. You do like crazy amount of work, but like when I really look at what you're doing, it feels like it doesn't have the foundations that it needs. Right. And I'm going to actually put myself in that, because there are a few things that I know that I've never given myself the time to really like master it. And I just went like higher just because I wanted to go higher. And I know that it's kind of like a flaw that I have sometimes. I'm not perfect at everything and I can see it, but it just, there's a balance in there. If you just not work your foundations enough, at least to a certain point, I mean, you're going to miss on a lot of things. So going to school is going to actually help you at least understand like those principles and those foundations. Right. Starting at school, you go out of school, you've learned those things. So then like, what do you do? Well, I mean, like you said earlier, Colton, you're going to have this driving force because you come out of school, you want a job, you're going to do everything, you're going to put the hours in, and most people are like super driven at that point, and it's necessary to be like that because that's the reality of things. Nobody gets out of school and they're super good, right? I mean, dude, I just look at like stuff that I was doing when I was outside of school, and it wasn't bad. Like I've learned pretty quickly my craft because I've put so much hours when I was at school. Right. But man, it's like you got like ways to go.
Yeah.
Right. It's, I mean, probably right now, like let's talk in like 10 years, and I'm probably gonna be like Marco from 2020. What an asshole! Like he didn't know that. Look at that. Look at the Mega Man series. What a bunch of bullshit. Like I don't know. That's how I'm gonna feel. Like I don't think so. Like I don't think so. But I'm just saying, like you can get so much better, right?
Yeah.
And I think. It's relatively easy to find this driving force when you're out of school because you want the job, right? So let's say that like this is just like natural, and then you get the job. So all right, cool, you got the job. Well, the first years at the job, you're always gonna like want to surpass yourself and give your employers a reason to keep you, right? So I think it's still like a bit natural to want to like become better or whatever. And this is where actually like it's a little bit after this the trap starts to set in, I find, on a couple of like artists, or at least like from my observation or my own experience, it's that you can get comfortable. And what do you do with that, with getting comfortable? I think there's like many ways it can go. Sometimes also like the industry can like break you. So it's not like always like the artist's fault, but I find that it's like after like, I don't know, man, like after 3, 4, 5 years in the industry, you kind of like have to do like a check on yourself if you haven't done one like regularly, something introspective, and like ask yourself like, hey, what am I doing? What's the next goal, right? Because with like long productions for a video game, you can sometimes like do the same thing for like 3 years and never really realize that you never asked the question, because you were just like, oh, we're finishing production, we're getting through, right? So then game ships and you're like, okay, so what do I do now, right? And I think that like sometimes people are going to be like comfortable and they're going to just like wait that somebody tells them what to do, which is like fine. It's fine to be comfortable. It's fine to have like a cozy government job. For having worked at the government, I can say that it's not for me, right? So I've never really like waited that somebody tells me what to do, or at least if I was in a position that somebody told me what to do, I wanted to get out of there, because I was just like, I can't. I need to decide for myself what I want to do, right?
Right.
How do you cultivate this like feeling? I kind of like don't know. Maybe it has to be like inside of you, that desire.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe it's bred. It's bred, because I remember when I was like started in the industry, I've never stopped to do personal projects. I've never stopped. I've never ever in my life did not do any personal project, or at least for like a long time, a long period, right? Sometimes life gets in the way. Like, for example, like the moment I finished the last Mega Man that I did, I haven't did like any personal work. The reason is because like my girlfriend's pregnant, stuff like I like some health issues that happened that I needed to take care of. Then there was like the holidays. Then there was more health issues and more stuff. And I have a company to manage, so it's like life gets in the way for sure, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it's kind of like your responsibility maybe to always like kind of like find like a time to do something for yourself. And if you do something for yourself, like personal work, can be anything else, but I think personal work is the standard. Yep. I think you'll kind of like always, you'll never lose yourself. You'll always like keep track of like what you like. You'll always remember that it's like at the end that you're important, and you have to value yourself and your time. And even if you have obligations like in a company, you'll remember that like you went in 3D art not to be in that specific company, or maybe, I don't know, but like you don't really get to choose where you go, right? So you just go in 3D normally because you like video game and you like drawing. So why should it stop at some point?
Yeah.
Like, even if you got a job, like you should still have dreams, right?
Yes.
Doesn't matter if you don't do them. I mean, it's just nice to have some dreams, and maybe at some point you'll find like a little time when crunch is over, and then like, oh, lunch break, let's just try to see like, oh, I just remembered like I always had the dream to like to do this and to do that, and then like you just find a little space and start doodling, and then like, oh, I remember how much fun that I had when I was doing that. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, lunch's over, I need to go back to work, but there's something there. Like, I want to go back to this. I want to take care of that. And I think when you do that kind of stuff, you never really like become like jaded or lose yourself or whatever. And just to be clear, if you end up being comfortable and you don't do personal work, you're not like a bad artist. It's not bad to do that either. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's that's what makes you happy, right? At the same time. But if you find yourself longing for something, maybe that's a way to just like not lose part of yourself. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Being able to, have something on the side that is aligned exactly with what you want to do, because it's not influenced by anybody else, helps you to stay in touch with who you are and what you want, is basically what that boils down to.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, at the same time, it's like when you're going to be done, if like the studio closes or the game like ends, and or whatever. It's like if you end up like being on your own again, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to try to just find the exact same to continue on the same line, or like will you have cultivated other ideas that maybe are going to be your next like ventures, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about like an ultimatum because you don't have a job anymore. But like I remember when I was working at THQ at the beginning, I was working on some games that were like cool, but they were not necessarily what I wanted to do. And then I started to do like freelancing just for fun because it's like, oh, I want some extra money, so I started to freelance. And at some point, I think like it took me like maybe like 6 months, and then I realized it's like, wow, I'm actually doing nothing that I really like to do. Like I want to do something that's just like crazy, and that's kind of why I started like actually, does it work in the time frame? I was going to say that's why I worked on the Sinners, but maybe that's not exactly at that time. But anyway, like spiritually what I'm going to say is still valid, but like I remember like doing the Sinners series, and it was really because I was like, I want to do something gross and sexual, and nobody's going to hire me to do that.
Yep.
So like I'm going to do it myself, and that's why actually I knew that was the theme I was going for, and I was like, you know what? If I want to get hired to do that kind of work, I'm going to need to do it myself. And this is, if I have to give like morals to our listeners today, that would be one of the most important one, and especially for like juniors that like are looking for a place in the industry. It's like, sure, you have to like do some dance and like what are the popular games, like whatever, Fortnite. Well, put some Fortnite stuff in your portfolio if you want to work for Fortnite. Put some wireframe and some normal maps baking, because like you need, before people assume that like you know stuff, you kind of have to prove it for people. So you have to do a little dance that I call.
Yeah.
But like, when you, depending on where you want to land, you also have to represent yourself in your portfolio, and that's what I needed to do, or that's why I did what I did when I did the Sinners. It's because I was like, hey, you know what, I'm kind of tired to do like stylized character. It's not even my style. I mean, I like stylized character. It's fine. I'll do it. There's so much stuff that I love to do. I mean, you just go on keosmason.com and you'll see like there's a fucking ton of like styles, because we do to be versatile. But there, at that point, I wanted one thing, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to get it if I wait that people give it to me, so I'm just going to represent myself. And it actually worked, because later I actually got a freelance gig that was like in line with kind of like what the Sinners were. And after that, I did the same thing. I was like, oh, I want to do like robots, so I did like my Wasp. And after, like, when I did my Wasp, it opened so many doors to a point where like at least that's what I think, that how people see me, but like they see me more as like a hard surface artist than anything else, because I did the Wasp, and then it brought me to another project to do a mech, and then another mech, and then another mech. And I guess that's because I did it well. If people like asked me to do it again.
Yeah.
But it all started because I was like, hey, I want to do a mech. I want people to ask me to do mechs. And then you do it, and poof, there you go. That's like, if you do it well, if you do it with like enough like heart, if you practice hard and if you spend time, well, you'll do something nice. People are going to ask you to do it again. That's always what it is.
Yeah.
It's always what it is. Like, in that same idea, studios are not, when they're looking for people, the same way that like when I'm looking for people, because like I'm an outsourcing company, so I'm going to go get artists to work for me. Yeah. Well, what I do is the same thing that like some team lead from a company is going to do. They're going to go on our station. They're going to see like what people are doing. They're going to judge with what they see from the portfolio, and they're going to ask you to do it again. Like, I'm not going to go grab the portfolio of somebody that does like Fortnite stuff and ask him to do like Apex Legend stuff, right? It can be, if like the Fortnite character is so well done, it can be a sign that it's a good artist that will be able to adapt. But it's like rolling the dice. If you're, and people are not going to roll the dice. I mean, we're talking about like fucking $1 million industry, short timelines, huge responsibilities. It's a teamwork. You can't blah blah blah. So yeah, you have to represent yourself, and that's what it is. That's doing a little dance, I'd say.
It's a very proactive endeavor too, being able to judge like what you want to do and just do it before anybody asks you to do it is a quality that I think is hard for a lot of people to grasp and learn, and it's not until I feel like most people don't do that until it's too late. You know what I mean?
Maybe. It might be. I mean, if by too late you mean like they don't have the energy really to do it, or they're just like put somewhere in a company and that's where they stay and they don't grow.
Yeah.
If that's the definition of too late, yeah, I would agree that it's like that's kind of like the trap of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just a matter of like, if you don't want to fall in the trap, just don't stop doing personal work. Just remember who you are and keep doing it, and just like. You got the job, you got the money coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You decide where you put the rest of your time, after your 8 hours per day. Well, if you really have artistic aspirations, I mean, just spend more time and work on something that you really like. It's kind of like overkill sometimes to do more than 8 hours per day, but if you spend it doing something you like, you won't have the same feeling of like, oh, it's a chore or that sort of stuff, or at least I hope that's where you can get to. But if I project myself in that idea, that's how it worked for me. I mean, I can do like 8 hours of like managing my own company, and by the end I'm like, hey, you know what, kind of need to do something for myself now. So whatever, starting a new project in this. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. Like right now, I won't talk about it because like I want to flesh it before like I even like talk about it. But I have like a theme that I've been like trying to explore for like 5 years now. I've never really like given myself the opportunity to really work on it. And lately I just found like just a key word, going back to like the first thing we said, like on the podcast, like inspiration.
Yeah.
I've played a game, and I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to hint at like what's my idea. Not because I want to protect it, just because I really want to sort of flesh it out before I shoot it outside in the public. But I played a game, and it just made me think of like some like dichotomy between two ideas, and I was like, oh my god! It just made me thought of this old idea that I had, and that maybe was the last missing piece to just connect the wires together for it to make sense in my head and feel like there's like a gold mine in this idea.
That's amazing.
Gold mine for myself. Like I said, not saying I'm going to change the world, but just like for myself, I'm just like, oh my God, that's good. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
It's going to change you, even if it doesn't change the world, right?
Well, and that's
exactly.
One of the things that I love about you so much, as Marco, just as a person, not just as an artist, that you're just so authentic. And I mean, bringing it to art, you are just true to the sense of your artistic core, and that you have these moments sometimes you're just like, oh man, like that resonated with me. I want to manifest this in some visual format that I can both sort of spend that time exploring these thoughts, but I can also share them with the world. That's so beautiful, man. I love that.
Well, thanks, man. It's I think it's kind of like it's just like some child energy, I'd say, that like I try to stay with, even if I'm getting older. Like I'm like 33 now, and sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, I don't look like a 33 in the way that I'm acting. And sometimes I think about when I'm going to be like 70-year-old and I'm going to be on my beanbag in the living room, too close to the television, playing the new Pokemon game, and I'm going to be like, I am not a grandpa. Like my grandson are probably ashamed of me, but you know what? I'm having fun because I'm doing 3D art or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just like I've just always like loved doing it. When I was a kid, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So it just feels like easy to get excited doing it. And dude, if it's something good to have as an artist, I wouldn't be able to say like why I stayed the way that I stayed, other than going back to this thing that I said earlier about like doing personal work, so that I always have like a part of my brain that's just like, let's have fun.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the other one is just like not judging myself too much, because when you compare, like, let's say you want to be somebody to be in the industry and you start to lose yourself, it's probably because you're like comparing yourself, or you're telling yourself that you have to be a certain way so that people accept you, like people that are going to hire you, right?
Yep.
But let's say we just like put that idea out there and we don't restrain it to like the world of video games or getting hired and stuff. I think that like, if you're just like, the more you can be accepting of yourself, the more you're going to just like feel, I don't know, like feel light about it. And in like art, I think you need to have a little bit of that, because even if we're not like, we're doing figurative art, right? Like 3D video games is not necessarily like a emotional kind of art, like abstract painting and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But I think that like at the core of every artist, like you kind of like need to not have like too much boundaries or too much like criticism about like yourself, so that you can just know to have fun with your craft.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what actually like sometimes like gets in the way of some people. And yeah, like I don't know, and I just find that like in anything in life, it makes it easier on yourself if you're able to kind of like accept yourself for the things that you like and not be ashamed of it, and just like go for it. And let's say, for example, like if what you like is like naked chicks, well, all right, I mean, it's kind of like cliche. I mean, it gets all the like on the internet, but this is what you like. I mean, it's not really bad. And I don't know, it's just whatever. It's fine to like that. It's fine to like Mega Man. It's fine to just like do a whole series of Mega Man characters, even if it's like way passé. Like who cares?
You're
it's
honest
fine
about it. Yeah,
exactly. As long as you're honest about it, I think that's one of the key. And if you really just like let yourself like be yourself, well, it's cool. And I think the analog or like the tangent idea is also like not comparing yourself too much to like other people, like to other artists, because I mean, like everybody's gonna like consider themselves good only if they're like Vitaly Roth good, and it's like, well, no, I mean, they're awesome artists, but like you can completely be like a valid artist and a happy artist if you're like not them or not close to them. And the comparisons, they really are in the way at some point. Like I really hope that like people, I am thinking about that now, but I really hope that like I'm not in the way of like some artists to be better because like they compare themselves to me, right? If ever like this happened, like, man, dude, just stop looking at what I'm doing and just do stuff for yourself. That would be like what I would say. I'm trying to be like super humble to saying that, because like it sounds, I sound so much like a douche to like think that like, oh, I'm so fucking important. But if ever like I'm the cause of something that happened to me also, comparing myself to better people and telling myself, oh, I'm never going to be like as good as them. Fuck that. Like stop looking at what they're doing or continue looking at what they're doing, but try to just like not make it about like a comparison or something. I mean, you're never going to be like the best 3D artist, except for the one that's the best, and like good for him or her. But like nobody else is going to be the best, right? So why would the goal to be the best? The goal should be to be like happy doing it. That's the whole thing. And if like, I mean, I'm saying that because I've learned it myself. I mean, maybe recently, like it came really later in my artistic journey. It's to kind of like stop or lower the amount I compare myself. I still do, right? We're all prone to that, but you really have to like lesser the degree that you do it at, because otherwise you're just going to put yourself some boundaries and you're not going to let your your free spirit, free artistic spirit, just like be happy with doing something. You're just gonna do it just to be the best. You're gonna judge yourself along the way. You're gonna annoy people also, because like I see people on the internet when they try to be the best, and it fucking annoys me to but I'm not gonna say anything, right? Because I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to do that. But I just see that, and I'm just like, dude, you need to do it for yourself, because you're probably not happy. You're probably putting yourself like so much stress, and you're annoying the shit out of me, and I unsubscribe you. Right. There we go.
Well, that sounds like, this is knowledge, this is wisdom of a person who has been consistently bettering and creating for, the last 10 years. But you're saying that you learned it recently, or this mindset came about recently. Was there a turning point, like a moment, or was it like when you took on the Sinners project that you found that there was a better way of doing it, or how did you come about that change in mindset?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know if I'm probably not going to be able to pinpoint an exact moment, because I would already know the answer, but I think if I have to to guess, I think I lost myself is probably too negative like expression, but like whatever. I lost myself in a project. I lost my conscientiousness in a project. And I think when I was finished with the project, I came out of it and I looked at what I did, and I was like, wow, I'm super happy of what I did. It's not the best thing in the world, but wow, I'm super happy of that. And I did that all without judging myself, because I just found like a focus. Mm-hmm. I wasn't there, and I came out, and it was good. And I realized that I did not subject myself to criticism or whatever. And I was like, wow, well, this is what I want. I want to do art without judging myself and without having like goals that are superficial. I want to redo that. And that's when you realize that's when it puts in perspective that all the negative like feelings you can have toward yourself, they're just like in the way, because you would not have done this project maybe as well or in the same time, or maybe you would not have done it. So now you realize, okay, so those are the enemies, this, that. So now how do I do to make sure that they don't come back? Well, it's kind of like a learning experience. They're going to come back, but you just like kind of like try to be conscientious about them. And when you know that they're there, try to not give them as much power. It's kind of like I went to this like shrink at some point, like years later, because I just had some like I wouldn't even know how to describe them, but I just had some like issues about like the way I was seeing myself or seeing life or whatever. And the shrink and some exercises he gave me, I realized like what were the evils, right? Maybe not like the source of it, but at least some like instances that I was like, oh, that's bad for me. When this happens, I know it hurts me. And now that I actually like know kind of like what it is, I know its pattern. And because I know its pattern, I kind of like maybe can like block it or deviate it. Yep. Not like deny it, but just like be like, oh, I'm doing that again. Okay, I need to kind of like not give it power or ignore it or just like push it away or replace it by something good. Mm-hmm. Like deflect it, whatever's your tool or your style. Like you basically just like kind of like acknowledge it, and then you can cope with it. Yeah, exactly. You can cope with it, and wishing it away or like hoping it's not there is not going to help you, because it's just going to make you sad that this is happening to you, right? But if you can know that this is what's happening and like to cope with it and do that stuff, I think it's gonna like really help. And man, I lost my train of thought. That's all right.
I want to.
Sorry,
I want to ask you, because that draws on something that I've been thinking about before this. Is like when I look at your work, it seems to me as though you have a grasp of such a wide plethora of things that when you come up against a new design challenge or something, it seems like you'd be able to just go into anything with ultimate confidence. But I know that that's not the case, and I don't think anybody ever has 100% confidence in everything they do. So I'm wondering, what your relationship is with fear, and how does it ever play a part in your creative process, where you think of, I have an idea, but I'm scared to approach this. How do you deal with that? And maybe what are some things that still scare you, or feel like, you have too much room to, or so much to learn in that area?
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good question, actually. I think, the first part, I think it's pretty easy to answer. Like, how do I cope with fear if I have to start something new? Mm-hmm. Well, I do it. I don't show it to the public, so I don't get judgment from outside. And I also remind myself to not judge myself doing it. And I just do it for myself, and I don't show it, and I practice it, and I go around it, and I practice it, and I know it's going to suck. I give myself permission to suck until I've done it enough to a point that I'm like, yeah, I get it. Okay. And then when you get it, then you decide, do I want to master it, or do I feel comfortable enough now to just do it without so much fear, or at some point, no fear at all? And I think that's what it is. When I started to do robots in 3D, I've never people know me for my hard surface ZBrush. Well, there was a time that Marco did not know how to do hard surface ZBrush. I was using ZBrush only for organic, and I was doing poly modeling in Max for my robots. Yeah. But at some point, I just got super inspired by some people, like Cedric and Filio, were my big inspirations for hard surface in ZBrush with their organic approach. And I was like, hey, you know what? I want to do that also. So I just started doing it. And when I came up with the Wasp, let me know that there was a couple of Wasp before this one. There was a lot. They were not super finished or anything, but I've practiced it so much until I was yeah, I guess that's good. And you never depending on how much time you practice it on your side, you'll know how comfortable you are. But then the next step is always going to be showing it to the public and see how it's received, right? Yeah. Which it's a double-edged sword, because sometimes it can be well received, but actually it was not that good. And sometimes it's going to be badly received, but what you did is awesome. So True. It's kind of you really have to watch out with public appreciation or right. Non-appreciation, whatever. You really have to watch out for that. That's a double-edged sword. But the point is just on your side, you practice it until you're you're comfortable doing it. And so for your first part of the question, I'd say that that's what it is. It's just a matter of practicing until you're comfortable at it. And the second part, I think, was more what do I do when I do stuff now that I'm kind of I know it's going to be a challenge. Mm-hmm. I just avoid it. No. You know what? It's kind of it's kind of half a joke and half not a joke. To really explain it, it's just that at some point you kind of have to know what you like to do and know what's your style and know what's your skills. Yep. And you can't be good at everything, right? So there's always going to be something that you don't know how to do. The idea of being afraid of it, it's really just a question of how you feel about it. Because if somebody, for example, something that I don't do much is robots, mechs, but mechs in terms of mechs, right. Big, full of joint and super functional kind of for example, something that would be inside of the shell. So the robotic parts, a lot of people really love that super primitive shape, kind of industrial looking. I'm not sure if I'm really explaining it well, but mechs,
thinking Transformer-esque.
Yeah, kind of, but even less organic. Really those really functional looking, or maybe the old, the G1 Transformers, Generation 1 Transformers, not necessarily the Michael Bay one, because the Michael Bay one, they have more of a organic look in their noise. Plus they're just noise, but that's what I think.
Moving noise.
Yeah, exactly. But like, let's say like, yeah, the really like cubic one, that's like something that I don't really like practice. So if like somebody was hiring me to do that, I would be like, oof, like it would be kind of hard to go about with ZBrush or maybe it's not that it would be hard, it's that it would be boring because ZBrush makes me want to go in a more like organic shape because it's like movements of the hands. That's what like really like drives me. And I think I would be so fucking bored doing that I'd rather just stay away from it. So that's why I said avoiding earlier as a joke. But the reality is that like there's some stuff I don't know how to do. Am I afraid of them? No, it's just I know that I'm not really good at them. And like, am I going to do them? Well, I mean, like if I get paid enough and I have time, sure. But I'd rather just like do something that I like to do and that I'm comfortable doing, right? The question now about like how much you know is like, did you give yourself the chance to learn? So you just decide how much you need to learn to be comfortable. And me, I needed to learn to do a lot of different things to feel like happy. And that's why I know how to do like a shit ton of things. But still, like I have my areas that I'm more comfortable and that I like to do most. And that's how I stay there. And since I found where I'm happy, well, I don't really have to face fear anymore because I basically now know how to do everything enough for me to be happy and enough for people to come and ask me to do it for money. So it's kind of like I just found like a niche that's like good. So what I'm going to do with that, I can stay in there or I can venture out and explore new things and do new things. Well, it's nice to have the niche. It's safe.
Right.
And what I'm working on right now is more like on a design aspect. So maybe I'm not necessarily going to be like the artist that's learning, like, maybe I'm never going to really like learn how to like model with like, I don't know, like, well, if I look, for example, like what some artists are doing, like with the mechs I was talking about, like maybe I'm never really going to learn how to do that, but I don't really have the interest. I'm happy with where I am. And I might, in order to expand and to continue to grow, maybe I'm just going to like venture more in like the design aspect of it.
Right.
That's probably where I'm the most interested to try. Maybe animation. I don't know. I always wanted to animate, but I don't know. I'm really getting into like collectibles and such. So like what I think I'm going to be doing is more like explore like design and really spend time in like the collectible aspect, like doing more sculptures, like Keos Masons brand, printing them, painting them, selling them. It's not a question of really of making money. It's more a question of like, well, I'm a nerd that likes collectibles now, so that's a new adventure.
It's what you're interested in, but it also happens to make money.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't like that. So, wow, that's another subject. But it's not like making like that much money. I mean, you can earn like a living doing it for sure. But it's I don't know. I think there's well, first of all, I mean, to really make money with collectibles, you have to sell like a brand, and like the thing that sells the most is like Marvel, DC, whatever. Like that's why you see like XM Sideshow, Prime One, like selling those things because it sells, and it's not a stab. It's a stab at them at all. It's if you want to have like a viable business, like you kind of need to listen to the public, right? And the public, they want Batman, so whatever, sell Batman. It's logical, right? But maybe it's not what I want to do, and but it comes with the fact that I'm not going to sell as much because I'm going to have to create my own IPs. People that buy stuff from me are probably like other artists that like something more fresh, but I'm not going to be able to sell to like the collectible artists that do that because they've always like listened to the Marvels and did this and did that.
Right.
That's more like, it's more like selling the IP, right? It's not necessarily selling the art. So that's why I'm saying like it would be doing it more for like the passion, because I'm not going to kid myself. It's going to take like a long time before I like people, like a lot of people know me and buy it because they're like, oh my God, that's such an interesting IP. And oh, I see myself in it. It's like, wow. Yeah, some people are. Probably enough for me to just like making me continue doing it. So yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
How have you found this whole transition into the business world? I mean, there's artists, there's Marco who wears the artist hat, and now there's this whole Keos Masons Marco as well. Have you found that it was pretty natural for you? Because a lot of artists I know, I remember going to like I ended up going to a school that was more on the liberal arts side, but I toured some very classical art schools, and those people were like, you're never gonna be able to like even understand business concepts. But you guys have like a super solid business setup.
Well, you know what? Everything I'm gonna say, like from now, when I'm gonna talk about Keos Mason, you have to realize also I did it with somebody else, like Cedric, and like gotta have to give credit where credit is due. But like Cedric is like very, very knowledgeable on like how things can work. When I actually worked with him, I worked with him like in 2 companies before we decided to start our own, and like he was always like either art director or lead, and you could see that like things in his head made sense. Like he knew how to like what to give to who so that the job gets done. He knew also how to prioritize things. And like Cedric comes from like a scientific background actually.
Oh, wow.
He's like mostly self-taught, and you can kind of see like he actually knew like those parts. And I mean, when we started to work with each other, we realized how compatible we were in terms of like our artist side versus our like production side. And like I was also like really interested because of that. Like I saw that in him and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like he really knows what he's doing. And like the fact that he's working so fast, like I know it's not magical because like I was looking at him like work and he was not in fast forward. Like he was working at the same speed as us, but he was just like super efficient at it.
Wow.
And yeah, like I heard the same thing from like FASC, for example. Like it's just like an artist that like he just knows where to cut the fat and really get to the point to get to the results, which is like such a virtue. Like efficiency like that for me is like something that I've always concentrated on. This is why I became like an extremely fast artist also. It's not because like I put like crazy amount of time, like I put a lot of time in my stuff, but I now know from doing it often that it's like, I'm not going to do that fully polished because nobody's going to see it. It's a waste of time, and I'm going to put my energy where it's like useful. And this is more like the production side of things, right? How to be efficient with like doing your work. And when I saw Cedric, I was like, okay, well, that guy knows that. And I think he saw it in me also. And we just like started to just like talk about that and kind of like drive ourselves. And when he was lead, he was actually challenging me. Like there was like this character I had to do like the high res, low res texture. We were doing a prototype, and it was like the main character of the game. We had like this like game we were working on, and I was like, oh, it's the main character of the game, so you're gonna give me like 8 weeks, right? And he was like, nope, I'm giving you 4 weeks. Oh, so do the high res. It's like, nope, to do everything. Like,
wow.
Okay, well, it's not doable. It's like, yeah, it is. Yeah, you just have to be smart. He was like, I'm going to be like beside you, right? So like every day I'm going to watch and I'm going to tell you like if you're advancing well in terms of like the major milestones, and if you need like help or whatever, I'm going to like help you in the micro, in the instance of like, well, this, be careful, that, maybe do this with that to get there, right? Yep. And like I've learned like just like this whole like efficiency and everything. So like through working this way, at some point when we were like thinking about starting Keos Masons, we knew all of those like ideologies of like how to work. And we've also, we were teaching at this school in France. I still teach there. I'm going there in like a month to teach like a workshop for 2 weeks. And it's going to be like the 8th time I go there. But it's like at some point now I just go, I'm pretty much over it, but I go there because I want to see my friends again. Everybody at the school that teach there, they're now my friends. I like to teach. I like to share what I know. a lot. I don't do it enough. Like people tell me, do that tutorial, do this, do that, teach me that. Life is so much in the way, and unfortunately, I'm more like I'm more selfish than liking to share. So the few time that I have, I'm gonna spend it doing my personal project first, and if I have time on the side, then I'm gonna share. So it's kind of like, it sucks because like I said, I love to share. It's just there's not enough time in the day, and or sometimes I'll do like a quick little tutorial, and it's going to be so well received, and I'm so happy to do it. But it's just, you know what? I'm teaching to all the freelancers working for me every day. I'm teaching like I spend so much time. So at some point, it's just like it's hard to put myself and do it. Whatever.
Right.
But parenthesis over. So like when I go to school and I do that, it kind of like also like. It taught me how to teach people, which is so interesting because another parenthesis, anybody that wants to get better at what they're doing, teach it. Man, it's crazy how your brain has to fragment the knowledge, dissect the knowledge, synthesize it, put it into like a digestible format, and then you execute it in front of people. And it just sometimes makes something that you knew emotionally, it makes sense. It makes it make sense. Yeah. And when it makes sense in your head and you like kind of like formatted it better in your head, you instantly get better and faster at it because you've given the time to fragment, like you fragment a hard drive to make it faster.
Right.
It just like you fragment your brain. You create connections in your head for it to make sense, and you just get better at it just because you've explained it. It's such a weird feeling, or like, but it's 100% true. Like, it's not true what I'm saying. Like, find me, kill me. It is. I assure you, it helps so much.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, and by doing it, just to go back to like what I was saying, by teaching and by the experience that I had with Cedric, like we realized, dude, we can absolutely create an outsourcing company, because an outsourcing company is basically you get a contract, you hire someone that like has a good starting point, you tell them how to do things, you support them for the time that they need to be supported, and they work for you, and then the client's happy, and there you go. And then you take you keep some work for yourself also, right? But it's totally what it is. It's just managing a team, and that's what Cedric has been doing, and that's what I've learned how to do at the same time. So just that's the like the basics of it, right?
Yeah.
Everything else that came with like managing the company came basically like on the fly, like learning to this, learning to that, and then you learn, I need to hire somebody to do that. Learn to like that you need to hire somebody to do this thing and that thing. Like I don't do the accounting of the company, right? I mean, it's not like I need an accountant. We need lawyers for any legal stuff. We need like financial advisors for this, and it takes a whole like team of like people. So technically, I mean, it's me and Cedric that we're managing the company, but like there's so many people that helps it like work, and then there's all the people that like we hire to manage beside like with us, like assistant managers or like full-on producers, and then there's like this and that, and that all came just by the experience of starting the business itself. And the reason why we're able to do it, I think it's just because we kind of learned to do the focal point correctly, which was production, being organized, and just by having to create a team and being organized, well, you also are now organized of like just making sure your company doesn't like sink. So like just business or whatever. It's crazy because like I've never went to business school or whatever, but like I'm pretty sure, and I'm gonna sound like a douche, but I'm still gonna say it. I'm pretty sure that if I was going to business school now, I would probably like a good amount of like everything they would teach us. I bet I would be like, like I do. Like, I've learned that like on the fly or whatever. Oh, now you've put a name on it and you've put like a certain theory on it. I would get better at like being like managing a business for sure. But like
it all kind of came naturally through the process.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we're like that successful after like 5-6 years of existing, it's probably just not like the roll of the dice. It's like we have
Definitely
something.
not, man.
Yeah.
I mean, doing any kind of business is so hard, but especially when you're managing that many people, and it's with art and it's outsourcing, and there are just so many facets to it. I mean, I remember when I was over for that barbecue way back when, and somebody was talking about taxes. And you're just like, oh yeah, like we're figuring out that whole thing. And I was like, oh Jesus, like I'm just focused on figuring out art and getting that job, and he's working on taxes.
Yeah, I know. Hey, there's so many things that I needed to learn. Like I said, it's like my accountant does everything, right? But I still have to know like some things because at the end of the day, me and Cedric are still the one that takes the decisions. So like do need to understand like nobody really like there's really few things that like we just leave it to our accountants or our lawyers. Like some like weird law thing or a tax thing where it's just like, okay, whatever you say, because I don't understand and I just want to do treaty. But most things that you kind of like have to know like a little bit, and dude, it sucks. It sucks so much.
It's working. So that's at least that's the silver lining to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the silver lining. But you know what? You know what's the really like the good aspect of what I'm doing? Like me saying it sucks is just like I'm venting, right?
Right.
I'm still doing it. I'm still going to continue doing it. But it's kind of like tangential to something we said earlier, to not lose yourself. Well, like I could easily lose myself as an artist managing the company, because like 8 hours per day I just manage my company. I tell people what to do. I check for future projects. I talk with clients. I have meetings. I have this. I have that. I'm like at a low degree, I am like a jack of all trades of like art direction, producer, team lead, HR, finance. I'm like all of that, right?
Man.
So how do you like stay an artist? Well, once again, you just do like personal stuff.
Right.
All my Mega Man stuff was me taking the rest of the time that I have or overtime just to do something, because I was not able to do as much as I would want artistically with the contracts that like we had, right? I mean, I still always have to like often I have to finish my artists' work, because sometimes some of them maybe overestimated the difficulty of the job. They're a little bit late, or they're not able to really get to the quality benchmark, the Keos Mason quality benchmark that like they have to achieve, right? That's one thing, right? So, well, sometimes I'm gonna like help them. Sometimes I'm gonna finish with them. Sometimes I don't have to do anything. Some of them like got really good at it, but I do like take my pen, go in ZBrush, finish some stuff, finish some textures or whatnot. I do that, but it's never really what's like driving you to feel accomplished. So hence, once again, the personal work, I'd say.
Oh, that's amazing. That sounds hectic, but I'm sure that the learning of it all has been very rewarding for sure.
Well, yeah.
So we're gonna have to kind of start wrapping up here, but we thought it'd be fun to do a quick rapid fire would you rather section to kind of bring this around. Would you be good with that?
Right, okay, I'm just gonna say one thing though. I'm super bad at coming quickly to an answer. Like I've been proving it for the last hour plus that I need to just like take the long way to explain something. But you know what? I accept the challenge, but I'm giving you no promises on results.
That's okay. We'll see where this goes. All right. So the first one, and I think I might know the answer to this just in the information you've given us, though. You can only either box model for the rest of your life or ZBrush only, but you have to stay in Dynamesh.
Oh, that's ZBrush Dynamesh.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I had a feeling that would be the case.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. It's way more free. Okay, next one. You either A, only work in a cave alone, or you have to work at a busy Starbucks for the rest of your life.
Cave alone. Even if I'm an extroverted person, I have no problems finding satisfaction on my own.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Interesting.
Okay. This is an easy one. This should be. Cintiq or tablet?
Cintiq to a point where it's like becoming an handicap. If I actually have to work on a tablet, I go back like 7 years in the past, and people are just disappointed at me.
I feel that. I'm kind of getting to that point too.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so here's one. This is a raging debate at I think probably every studio, but definitely at ours right now. Working in a light room or working in a dark room?
Dark room.
Dark room.
Marco,
dark
we're
room.
never talking again.
Yeah, you know what? You'll come around, I'm sure.
Nah, man.
No,
we were
well,
saying
I don't-
the two types are you're either a bat or you're a solar panel, and I get charged up in the light. I think both. Yeah, Damon and I are both in that category.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Well, you know what? I don't feel strongly about the answer because the reality is that I work in the light every day, so it's like kind of like hypocritical to say that I work in the dark. But I just find that maybe like there's like just a few advantages of working in the dark, and it's only about like optimal work for like visually see like what you're working on. Yeah. And in terms of like drive and energy, it's like, yeah, probably it's better when you know like what time of day it is.
It's true, it helps.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I mean, like, I think working in the dark too much at some point, you just like start to grow fangs and stuff, and
you actually
like you say the bat. Yeah,
you become the bat.
Exactly.
All right, next one is big city or small town?
Oh boy.
Did you?
Wow,
the
that's
town
hard.
we were talking about, was that a small town or was that like a kind of city area as well?
It's a smaller town. I mean, like when I said it changed name, it's because they merged like 3 cities in one that were like close went next to each other. You know what? Okay, so the answer is gonna be small town. Okay. But I still have just to give like a little quick explanation. Right now I live in Montreal. I live in like a residential area with like a lot of people.
Yep.
But like every decision that I make, I realize it's always to live as close as how I lived when I was in a small town.
I see. Interesting.
So I will not move from Montreal because like I've made my nest here, and there's like so much like advantages of having everything around you without a car, like we were talking at the beginning.
Right.
But I realize that like I always take like decisions that are based on like my suburb upbringing. So I'd say small town, and I would not be unhappy like moving in the country if there's like good internet connection or whatever.
That's always the crux. It has to be good internet.
It is, dude. We went to like Sicily for like a trip a couple of like years ago, and there was like there's this super cheap Airbnb we rented, and it had like an incredible view. It was nuts, and to a point where like I stayed too many days just like screwing around at the Airbnb instead of like visiting the town, just because I was like, I don't need anything else. I see the entire ocean from this balcony and nothing else. And I just need to have my laptop here and my Cintiq, and I would be able to work here forever. Yep. But no internet.
Yep.
So,
and it's a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker until they invent some form of like fucking like super awesome satellite internet that you can use as a character artist to upload, download 3 gigs of data like on the fly.
Yeah.
Not possible for the moment, but we'll see.
Makes sense.
I stay optimistic.
Yeah, hopefully someday. All right, here's one. And this is, I'm hoping that this really splits you in half. Spider-Man or Mega Man?
It's kind of like, do you want to say something that makes me happy or something that makes me sad?
Oh no.
You know what? I'm gonna say it that way. It's gonna be Mega Man.
Yes.
But who's my favorite superhero? It is honestly Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Honestly, Spider-Man is the coolest one.
Yep.
The coolest one by far. The one with the best suit and the best this or whatever. It's just super cool. And I would say, if I was to like nerd out about Spider-Man, Spider-Man was probably the only show I was really watching, the only superhero show I was watching when I was a kid, actually. I remember coming from home and watching all the Spider-Mans and stuff, and I got pretty far in the ones that were available in French Canadian. So, yeah, I really deep dove in that, and I really appreciated it. And playing like the game that you guys made, I mean, I drawn me back at that, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Just the whole like building swinging thing or whatever. And for me, I mean, it's like I'm gonna say something, and you don't need to answer because it's gonna be super indie or whatever. But like, I just want to see Venom because he's my favorite. He's the coolest looking character. I have a sculpture that I bought from Venom because I just found he's so cool, and he's the one that like goes and look the most out of its style, I'd say. Right. Like the whole norm of like how characters from Marvel or DC they look, but man, I love it. So sure, Mega Man, but you know what, Spider-Man all the way. He's fucking cool.
I'll take that hybrid answer. All right, so this is the last one, and this one you can chew on a little bit more too.
Okay.
You have to live in the world of one IP tomorrow. Which IP do you choose? What is your role in that world, and why?
Okay. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
You like some messed up worlds, man, but I don't think you want to live in them. Like, go to the dark soul.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Like, I was gonna say, like, yeah, I'd love to like be like in Bloodborne, and I would be like a hunter, and I would get stabbed. Yeah, I would get stabbed 1,000 times per day, and probably super hurtful. I mean, even if you have like 20 blood vials and you can like fucking resurrect all you want, it fucking sucks to die. I'm pretty sure.
Probably.
So, like, I don't know if, like, I would have to like live in that world, but be like super awesome to a point where it's just like you're the annihilator and you don't have any consequences. But wow, that's
the John Wick of the Bloodborne world.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, wow, that it makes it such a hard question. Just the point about like living in it.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, like another world that I love is Nier Automata. But it's like, where would I go? It's destroyed. There's dolls fighting robots, and everything sucks. Yeah. If you're human, because they're annihilated. So it's like I don't even have a place in there. So wow, that's already like scratched. Yeah. Dark Souls is just like no way. It's knowing that the end is coming every time, and that you don't even know what's good and what's bad. It's just like wow, that's I don't know, man.
That's tough.
Even Mega Man, it's like well. There's always conflict. There's always Dr. Willy that once again he did something or Sigma did something, and then you're like, oh, well, looks like we're never going to learn from our mistakes. And then you're always in conflict. Yeah. You're always in conflict.
There's no peace.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you know what? One that I would actually really love to be in is probably the one from Journey. The 3-hour game Journey, like that was on PlayStation 3.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it's so like enchanting, and it's really about like discovering and all that sort of stuff. So this one is like really elevating, and I'm like, you know what? I would elevate to that level. That would kind of like be cool. I would like to live in Journey, fly in the sky, go through all the color schemes of the game and the environment. I don't know, man. There's something super like romantic to this one. I think I'll go with that. Just to end on a nice note.
What a great answer. That's absolutely perfect.
Cool. Well, was there anything else that I know in a lot of your interviews you've said if people want to come work for you, you guys have an email? Was there anything else you guys wanted to plug? I mean, I know you have some more 3D prints that are coming out soon, so people can keep an eye out for those. But anything else?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, if anybody wants to work for us, it's super simple. You just you go on our website. There's like the contact page. You send us an email. Make sure to not make mistakes in your email when you write it, because like often I just reply to somebody and it just says like, cannot reply to that person.
Ouch,
and then I have to figure out where they made their typo and their address. And sometimes it's just impossible because they just like invented a word. And I'm like, I'm going to start to guess like either.
Right.
But like, don't make a mistake. Send us an email. And like, your email has to be really like shitty for us to not answer. Like we answer to like everybody that has questions, even if it's to say like, oh, sorry, don't have time or whatever. We always look at our stuff. Or maybe like if it really fell through the crack in the spam mail, maybe whatever, but really do answer to people. So you have question, you want to send your portfolio and work for us, please be my guest. Send us an email and we'll look over, and like, you never know. Like you see, like I needed an artist like in January, and the day that I needed an artist, I received an email from a guy, and he was like, "Hey, can I work for you?" And my answer, I checked his portfolio, and my answer right away was like, "Yes." And like, it's kind of funny because his reaction was like, "What? Like really?" like yeah, you just sent the email at the right time, and you were exactly like the profile that like I was looking for, like in many ways. So I mean, yeah, cool. Yeah, there you go. So sometimes that can happen. Sometimes you can wait a little bit, but dude, just send your email and we'll see you. So I would plug that, and otherwise I would say like, well, stay tuned. I mean, we're working on like having like a better line of like a new line of prints. That's what I'm really working for. Like video game is our jazz, and we do that the most. So that's what takes the most time. But like, I'm really like working hard on having like new things coming up. It's just finding like a way to really like process it. That's sometimes that's hard, but stay tuned and we'll see that, and maybe something else that's gonna come soon. I really hope it's gonna work. I'm gonna find out like this week if it's possible, and if it's possible, it's probably gonna happen soon. But we're gonna open like a merch store for like people that want to buy like merch from us, and
yes, please.
I say that with like the weirdest feeling, because I created merch so I can create merch for like people working for us. And I've never thought of opening the store, but enough people said like, hey, you should open a store. You shouldn't like I want to buy one of the Keos Mason hat. And in the back of my head, I'm like, why? It's like we're an outsourcing company, but you know what, dude, if people want it, it's like, why would I not sell it? And
exactly,
like, I'm not even gonna like sell it to make profit. So like, I'm really just like gonna put it out there for like people to be able to just get one if they really want one, and whatever. That's cool for us. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to know that people want it, and even if it's like I find it weird, but I'm just super happy in the end. And if it makes people happy, well, just fucking high five. Yeah. There you go.
Well, you got a customer here for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool,
yeah, I mean, it's funny you say it, because the perception of Keos Masons for most people is that they just do baller amazing work, and I think a lot of people forget that the bulk of what takes up your time is working on video games that people don't necessarily associate with the Keos Masons brand.
Right.
We're just thinking, oh yeah, he does the Wasp. That's Keos Masons.
Yeah.
That's 100% of Keos Masons, and that's what people want to.
Yeah, that's true. Eh? That's true. It's like, it's so hard sometimes to have a perspective on yourself from like the outside, and like when you put it this way, I'm like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
It's cool, and I'm super happy. I'm super happy about it. So you know what? I'm doing it because people like seem to want it. Gonna make me happy. Gonna make people happy.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, well,
that's awesome.
Smart branding decision too, because Keos Masons just sounds like very cool, artistic brand.
It's rad.
I'll rep it.
Cool, man. Well, that's good to know. Seriously, I should run some like statistics on stuff to know like that sort of things, to just make like intelligence like business decisions, because everything that we do often is just because like, oh, that's going to be fun, and then we don't realize like the implication and how good it can be for like branding or whatever. So there's something in there. Maybe we should like hire some like marketing dude.
No, they'll ruin it. Don't let them do that.
Your compass seems to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Artistically and business wise, you seem to be running a pretty good setup over there.
Yeah. Well,
we do it with love, so we'll continue doing it with love.
That's good, and we look forward to what's coming next from you guys. And we've really enjoyed talking to you, Marco. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this.
Yeah, thanks so much.
It's my pleasure. Dude, it's my pleasure. Seriously, it was really nice. Thank you, guys.
I'm recording this outro a few days after our talk, and Damon and I have already organized a personal work jam session with some of the other artists at Insomniac. So thank you, Marco, for reminding us why we chose this path. We'll keep you up to date on the launch of the Keos Masons merch store. And if you haven't taken a peek at Marco's recent work, we've got a link to his art station in the show notes. Check it out and prepare yourself to be inspired. If you like this episode, please leave a positive comment. But if you really like this episode, please also leave one thing that you really enjoyed and one thing that you think we can improve on. As we continue to grow the channel, Damon and I would love your feedback on everything from the topics that we covered to the way we ran the show, or even the guests that we chose. So if you really like us, please give us your full critique so we can keep making this show better. Well, that's it for this episode. So if you're feeling the way we were, follow Marco's words, open up ZBrush or grab a pen and paper and create something just for the artist in you.